What's up, Nerf Nation? So this is my blue stinger. This is my most recent integration that I've done. It is my current primary I use for the most part at most wars. This is what I'm running. It is definitely my best blaster I own, and let's go over some of the features. So to start out, you're probably wondering, what the heck is this? So this is the functioning blaster is obviously a Stryfe. You guys probably could have guessed that. But the stock and the foregrip, which is also holding my LiPo, this is a Koosh Vortex Tornado. I'll show some pictures for you guys of the two blasters and how kind of they came together. So this took a very, very long time, several months to put together. A lot of cutting, a lot of sanding, and a lot of epoxy to do what you see here today. So let's just talk about the internals first, and then I'll talk about the external features. So to start out, in the front, we have two Extreme Pro 180 motors that are housed in a black steel props flywheel cage. Now this cage has canted motors, so they're on a tilt, which actually puts spin on the dart. So this cage makes your darts fly much more accurate. And this is very much true. I have used this in a war, and it is so much more accurate than any Nerf blaster I own. I'll show you guys a firing demo here in a second, and you'll see how tight the groupings are. Also, these have worker flywheels on them. So they actually grip the dart a little bit better because there's ridges on it. So when you have these really high torque motors like the Extreme Pro 180s, the worker flywheels are very helpful to help grip the dart and not get as much dart slip. And then also, because I'm using a black steel props cage, that cage has brass running through it, and that also is a very important reason why it's so accurate. So since I've covered up, obviously, the battery tray, I had to relocate where I was going to house my LiPo. And obviously there's no room in the stock here. So I actually housed it in the foregrip here, which used to hold Vortex rings. This Vortex Tornado used to fire rings. I don't own any of the rings, and this blaster was partially broken when I found it thrifting one day, and so that's what made me decide to go ahead and integrate it into this Stryfe. So, but nevertheless, I cut out all the grooves that held those rings, basically just hollowed it out, and that gave me enough room to fit a 1000 milliamp 65C constant graphene 2S LiPo. So that's what gets the maximum performance out of these motors, is when you run it off of a LiPo with a very high C constant. That really gets the maximum performance you can get out of these 180 Extreme Pro 180 motors. The wiring running through this blaster is 14 gauge AWG silicone wire. It is a little bit thicker than I normally use in most of my builds, but since I'm running these very high torque motors, I thought that it was a good thing to upgrade the wiring from what I normally use is 18 AWG silicone wire to 14. So maybe a little overkill, but it never hurts to have thicker wire. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to get through some small spaces sometimes, but no big deal. This also has a new cherry switch installed. When you're running a LiPo, you must replace the switch. Not to mention, it just is a better feel. It has a much better feel than the stock Nerf switch. So it's very clicky, and I'll let you hear the blaster rev. So that revs up in a half a second, if not less. I mean, that's ready to go. The minute you pull that trigger, those flywheels are ready to fire a dart. So you don't have to wait for the blaster to rev like you do in a stock Nerf blaster. With a LiPo, it's ready to go right away. When I integrated these two blasters, I started out with some hot glue to get everything put in the right place and check alignment. But then I took off the hot glue before securing the blaster with 2-part epoxy and epoxy putty to fill in gaps. And then also use Smooth Cast 65D to add some weight to the stock, because this blaster with the battery up front and everything up here is very heavy, and there's not a whole lot back here. So I added Smooth Cast 65D into the stock region to add some weight back here to balance the blaster much better. And I also added some to the middle of the blaster to help secure the two shells, but also add a little bit more weight and have a little bit better feel. I like a little bit heavier of a blaster. I feel like it allows me to aim a little bit better, and so I'm not just waving the blaster around willy-nilly. Alright, so to talk about some of the external features. This thing obviously has had many, many hours of sanding after the integration was done. Then I applied a black vinyl dye base coat. Then I applied a black Duplicolor automotive paint, and then I masked off the areas I wanted to keep black, and then covered it with a Testors enamel for the blue. After I finished painting the blaster, I went over the black actually with a black Testors enamel hand paint, and I did this because I really wasn't satisfied with the black automotive paint that I chose. Normally I have no problems with that paint, but for whatever reason, the type of black I chose was very flat, and I just wanted something a little bit shinier, so I went over it with a Testors metallic black, and it helped it shine up a little bit, but it's still not super shiny, so it's actually exactly what I was looking for. So also I've added a voltmeter underneath the jam door. This is reading, you probably can't see it on the video, but and I can't even hardly see it right now because the sun's blinding. But it is reading 8.32 volts. I just charged this LiPo, so it is at its almost maximum voltage there. Obviously, I did some polycarbonate. I had to custom make a jam door here, and then these are thumb screws that you can just screw off by hand, so no need for a screwdriver to take out your battery. And then also, I filled this gap up here with a piece of polycarbonate, and I decided to leave it clear because I thought it looked kind of cool. And but that just fills the gap where actually the priming bar used to be on the Vortex Tornado. There used to be a pull-back prime. This was a spring-powered blaster, and you pulled it back, so this is where the priming handle used to be. Also, I've added a extended mag release. This, I believe, is a Gavin Fuzzy 3D printed mag release for the Stryfe, and I really love these things. It just makes it a lot more, it just quickens up your reload time quite a bit, and it's just very, very convenient. And since I use this blaster a ton, I thought this was a very important piece to add. So since I decided to use 180s in this build, I had to cover the motors with a battery cover, and this is a 3D printed battery cover from Containment Crew. I'll put a link to that also in the description. This has been modified some. They usually have vent holes in here, which they actually, I've talked to them personally, and they said they can print them without those. So if you don't want those in your print, you might be able to ask them nicely, and they'll probably take those out for you, no problem. I also cut off the screw ports because they made this so you can just screw it straight to your blaster. But since I wanted this to be a very cosmetic and nice looking piece, I decided to cut those off and fill in any of the 3D printed gaps that were left, and then attach this with 2-part epoxy. To do a lot of the cosmetic work here, like this, there's a lot of this was done with epoxy putty. This was not all plastic. And I actually used a special type of epoxy putty called Epoxy Sculpt, which gives you a lot more work time and just is a lot easier to use and more friendly to work with. You have at least an hour, if not a couple, to work with this material before it dries, unlike normal epoxy putty, which you have maybe 5 minutes or so. So when you're doing quite a bit of detailing with epoxy putty and basically sculpting with it, it is very, very useful to have this type of epoxy putty, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's into cosmetic work like this. So I'll put a link to that also in the description. So when I first saw the Vortex Tornado, I always thought this portion looked like the back of a bee, and that the stock actually looked similar to wings. So that's where I got my inspiration from. So I started looking online for photographs of bees, and I saw this beautiful blue bee. And blue is my favorite color, so I was like, that's going to be my inspiration for this blaster and the paint job. So that's what I went with. The photo had the bee had very cool eyes, and you could see like this grid pattern. So that's why I put this grid pattern in the front here on the battery door, and also on this to kind of represent those eyes. Now it's very abstract, but it's obviously a Nerf blaster, so it's not going to look exactly like a bee unless you do like a ton of sculpt work, and that's not really what I wanted. I just wanted to roughly look like a bee, kind of like the old Max Force Nerf line. I was a big fan of the looks of those blasters, thought those were really cool, and so that was kind of my inspiration for this blaster, is to kind of make it look like a bee. Yeah, so talk about the performance a little bit. I've run this thing over a chronograph a couple times. It's getting right around that 120 mark, give or take. So it's performing very well, and about right where I want it for HVZ games. Usually that's right at the limit, so I'm very happy with the performance of this. You can spam darts very, very quickly, and you can also single shot, obviously, very easily, being it's a semi-automatic Stryfe. So yeah, so to finish out the video, I'll show you another firing demonstration, kind of showing you how tight the groupings are and how accurate this blaster is because of that cage that it has in it. And then I'll just show you some close-up photos, and hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope to catch you in the next video.